A woman came to me, broken by the consequences of her own infidelity. Her young lover turned out to be a thief who attacked her son right in front of her eyes. The aftermath, the exposure of her affair and a shocking betrayal by a close young friend, completely upended her life. Now, she's seeking relief through a public confession. While I assured her anonymity, this platform allows her to express herself to a wide audience while preserving her identity. Also, to preserve her anonymity, my client chose a false name for herself, and she'll refer to me simply as the professor. It's a silly nickname from my youth, not a claim to any academic title.
To preserve anonymity, all names in my story have been changed. For the purposes of this confession, let me be called Megan. I've always loved that name. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my adult life, I was a happy woman. I know how that sounds now, considering what happened, or rather, what I did. But I swear, I was truly happy. My life was simple but genuine, warm, and cozy. A loving husband, 2 wonderful sons, shared dinners, trips to my parents' house for Christmas, children's birthdays with balloons and cakes, morning kisses when he left for work. I thought it would always be this way. I met Ron in college. He was a year ahead, studying engineering, while I was just starting my literature program. The rest of my peers annoyed me with their arrogance, but he was different. Ron was always calm, balanced, and very kind. Nowadays, people might describe someone like him as a sunny Labrador. Ron didn't try to impress me with grand words, he was simply there. From our first date, I knew I could rely on him. His warmth wasn't loud, but it enveloped me. 6 months later, we were living together. 2 years after that, we got married. No one doubted that we were meant for each other. Even now, I don't doubt it, although memories of the happiness I lost with Ron make my heart ache. Our marriage was a true partnership. We weren't wealthy, living in a small apartment for the first few years. But we had something far more valuable than money: mutual respect, support, and love. I never feared sharing my worries or doubts with Ron. He always listened. Then he'd hug me, and everything felt simpler. In bed, he always tried to satisfy me, though I never considered that aspect of our relationship particularly important. My libido was stable but not very high. Ron was fine with that, and I was happy with him. The birth of our first son was a blessing. We both wanted children, and when Jake arrived, everything felt even more complete. Naturally, I left my job to care for the baby, and I never regretted that decision. Jake wasn't a fussy baby, my sister sometimes helped with him, so I had free time for myself. And Ron always spent time with our son in the evenings after work, so I didn't feel overwhelmed. When the baby slept, Ron and I would watch movies, cook something delicious, and fall asleep in each other's arms. A few years later, Lucas was born, and our family became even louder, more joyful, and lively. Lucas was a more vocal baby, but our experience and mutual support helped us handle all the challenges. We had everything: joy, trust, love. I was invited to join a newly established, trendy publishing house, offering a higher salary, intriguing projects, and more time required at work. It was an exciting opportunity and a new challenge. I hesitated, but Ron supported me. "You deserve this, Meg. You're so talented." I remember those exact words. And I agreed. I hate myself for that. From the very beginning, the atmosphere there was different. The women in the office were vibrant, outspoken, independent, and younger than me. They held good positions, wore striking clothes, drank expensive wine after work, and talked a lot about freedom, about men who disappointed them, about careers as the essence of life. They immediately started inviting me along. "Let's go to the bar, come for some mulled wine, you need to have some fun, Meg." I didn't give in right away. I would come home after work, cook dinner, put the kids to bed. Ron worked significantly more than I did. Moreover, I spent almost all of my salary on personal needs, while Ron covered about 70 to 80% of the family budget. So, I felt it was fair to take on household responsibilities. Besides, the boys helped me, and Ron tried to ease the housework with modern gadgets. But over time, I started feeling something strange. Boredom? A hidden resentment? Is this all I deserve? When I shared stories from home, my new friends laughed. Especially Julia, a confident woman who often said, "Meg, seriously? You cook dinner for the kids every day? Don't tell me you iron his shirts too. That's so last century. A woman today should live life to the fullest." It all sounded like jokes, friendly teasing, but a seed of doubt was planted within me. I started staying late at work more often, for important meetings, to prepare a project. In truth, it was so I wouldn't fall out of sync with them. I wanted to be one of them. Now I realized that even then, work was bringing me less and less satisfaction. But I wanted to feel younger, more vibrant, freer. My new friends had mixed feelings about me. They admired the quality of my work, but it seemed like they didn't really respect me as a person. They had no children, no marriages, no obligations. At least, that's how they presented it. I felt older, bound by routine, and therefore behind. I wanted to prove, no, I can still do it. I'm still worth more than just being a mother of two, you understand?
I want to draw viewers' attention to this moment. There is a clear distinction between a person's true values and what is imposed by their environment. Deep inner satisfaction from the process and its results is the line that separates the two. The client missed the moment when work ceased to bring her joy and became a tool for her ego. With her permission, I left this comment to help others avoid falling into the same trap.
It was on one of those evenings that I met Nick. We were at a bar. I was holding my third glass of wine, laughing at something silly, when he came up. He had that kind of smile that immediately makes you like someone. He seemed fun, easygoing, and confident. And he was younger. 5 years younger, as I found out later. At that moment, it didn't matter. He gave me a compliment, ordered another glass, joked about the boring white dresses good girls wear, and then asked me if I wanted to dance. I don't know if I'll ever be able to explain how it all happened. How I went from being a rational woman, a mother of two, to someone I would have despised myself. A whole lifetime won't be enough to wash away this shame, but I have to speak, if not for myself, then for those who now stand at the edge like I once did. So when Nick, right in front of my younger friends, asked me to dance, I said yes. Their glances pushed me into it. They seemed to say I was too much of a good girl to respond to the flirtation of a younger man. I didn't feel cool enough. Now I understand that this was the behavior of an immature girl, not a grown woman, but back then I didn't think that way. It felt like this was something new, this job, these friends, these nights that smelled of youth and freedom. It felt like a way to breathe fresh air. But in reality, I was already slowly suffocating from the lies I kept telling myself. Credit where credit is due. Nick knew exactly what to say to make me feel not like a mother of two, not like someone's wife, but like a desired, youthful woman. He didn't let his hands wander, but his eyes were hungry, and that flattered me. I didn't even notice how I started wanting to become his prey. We drank cocktails. We danced. We laughed. I felt like I was back in my university years, as if everything that came after, family, children, responsibility, was just a pause in my real life. It was a dangerous illusion, pulling me deeper with every moment I spent near him. He walked me to a taxi. Then he started texting me. Innocent things. Did you sleep well? You look great today. Wanna grab a coffee? I didn't see it as a threat. I wanted to believe it was just harmless flirting. That I had a right to it. After all, that's what my friends kept telling me. You don't owe anyone anything. You're a woman, you should live for yourself. I internalized those words more deeply than I care to admit. My friends praised me for being so free with Nick. Our messages became more and more heated. I lied to myself, telling myself that Ron and I had grown distant, and that was the real reason. That he didn't look at me with the same awe anymore. That he was too busy with the kids, with work, that we had become nothing more than roommates. But the truth was, he simply trusted me. He hadn't stopped loving me, I was the one who crushed that love. To justify myself in my own eyes, I began creating reasons to argue. I started throwing out accusations that were meaningless and baseless. I just wanted a fight. At first, Ron was genuinely confused by the change in my behavior. He sensed something was wrong, something deeper than day-to-day frustrations. But his trust in me ran too deep for him to suspect betrayal. Instead, he sincerely tried to rekindle our relationship. He bought me earrings, planned a few lovely date nights, even hired a nanny for an entire weekend so we could go horseback riding together. And even there, I kept texting Nick in secret. Eventually, I agreed to meet Nick for coffee. Then dinner. Then, the night. At a hotel. I came home at dawn and lied that I'd stayed over at a colleague's place after a company party. I lied to Ron. I lied to my kids. And I got used to lying so quickly it was as if I'd been waiting my whole life for this. I didn't know I would cry after every meeting with Nick, hiding in the bathroom. That I would look at my sons and feel something inside me tearing apart. But I kept going. Because he knew where my weak spots were. Because he said all the things I wanted to hear. He told me I deserved more, that I wasn't living my own life, that I had lost myself. He told me he would help me find myself again. He was younger, a bit carefree, but incredibly persuasive.
I want to highlight a particular episode that illustrates the root of the problem. The client persistently tries to deny her guilt in this situation. While I avoid criticizing clients, I must note that using any ideology as a metaphorical shield never works. Actions have consequences, and adults are responsible for them.
Sometimes I caught myself thinking he was playing some kind of game, but I pushed those suspicions away. I was special, right? There was no way he could be faking it. Our meetings became more frequent. And I became bolder. When Ron took the kids for a weekend at his mother's, I let Nick into our house. Into our home. Into the bed Ron and I shared. I remember standing in the kitchen afterward, drying dishes, my heart pounding. What if the neighbors noticed something? What if our older son had forgotten something and came back? But the fear didn't stop me. On the contrary, it made everything even more thrilling. And then things got worse. Nick would come over when Ron was at work and the kids were at school. Sometimes he stayed for an hour, sometimes longer. He didn't wait to be invited, he could just show up in the middle of the day. The professor later pointed out something I had never really considered. How did Nick know my schedule so precisely? It took him nearly an hour to get from his own place to my neighborhood. The answer to that question shocked me, but I'll explain it later, to keep the timeline clear and avoid confusion. I didn't know where my love for Ron ended and my shame before him began. I was being torn in half, but I kept living a double life. I decided the best thing I could do was to become a good wife again, to stop the accusations and pretend we were a happy family. I thought that as long as he didn't know, he wouldn't be hurt. My sudden kindness won Ron over. He believed his efforts had paid off, that his love and devotion had helped us overcome a rough patch. But the truth was, I had simply decided not to hurt him more than I already was with my betrayal. My life had turned into one big lie, and little by little, it started eating me alive from the inside. Ron suspected nothing. Even though the pointless fights had stopped, we began to grow distant physically. I avoided intimacy, making up headaches, exhaustion, and meetings. He asked if everything was okay, and I'd just nod and say work was tough. And again, the same easy lies, slipping off my tongue. One day I came home and found Nick rummaging through my cabinets. I asked him, "What are you doing?" He said he was just checking if I had something sweet to eat. I laughed and pretended to believe him. It was a hysterical reaction, really, because laughter kept me from thinking that something was seriously wrong. But everything collapsed one morning when Ron was at work and the kids were supposed to be at school. I was in the bedroom with Nick, and as always, he acted boldly, freely, as if we were already a couple, as if this was his home. I went to take a shower, leaving him alone. How long was I in there? 15 minutes. Then I heard a scream and the sound of something crashing. I ran out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, and saw my son, covered in blood. Nick, already dressed, was hitting him in the face. My boy was trying to fight back but couldn't stand up to a grown man. I screamed. Nick suddenly seemed to snap out of it and looked up at me. His lip was bleeding and his eyes were wild with rage, his mouth twisted like a predator's snarl. For a second, I was afraid he'd attack me too, but instead, he got up and fled. My son lay groaning on the floor. I didn't even notice right away that next to him lay his smashed gaming console. It turned out that while I was in the shower, Nick had gotten dressed and started snooping through my children's rooms. And when he pulled out the console, he was caught by my older son, who had come home earlier than I expected. My son thought we were being robbed and tried to take his console back from the thief. That's what Jake told me. He's a naive kid and couldn't imagine he'd been fighting not some random burglar, but his mother's lover. I couldn't bring myself to tell Ron the truth, so I asked Jake not to say anything. He didn't understand why. He was worried the intruder might come back and couldn't imagine any rational reason why we should keep this from his father. And then something changed in his eyes. He understood, and ran out of the house before I could say anything or stop him. The full weight of the situation suddenly hit me. Before, I had thought I might be able to fix things somehow, to smooth it all over, make it disappear, just a fading shadow in our memory. But after Nick laid hands on my son, there was no room left for denial. I stood there, wrapped in my robe, watching Jake run to his father's workplace, and I realized my life was falling into the abyss. And I knew, it was all my fault. That was the moment all my defense mechanisms crumbled. I could no longer justify anything. I had let evil into our home. I hadn't only betrayed my husband. I had betrayed my children, and myself. I had become the woman who brought a wolf into her children's lives.
Thank you for listening to my client. I invite you to share your honest and open assessments of her actions in the comments. Public feedback might help her view the situation more constructively. The second part of her confession will clarify everything. In the meantime, please like this video and subscribe to my channel to support my work. To protect anonymity, the images and voices have been altered using advanced technology. This has made it possible to share my guests' deeply personal and morally complex story in full detail with a wide audience, without fear of revealing their identity. It allows for honest feedback from viewers, which may help ease the burden on my guest's heart and provide advice from a large number of objectively minded individuals. Names, locations, and some details have been changed for privacy reasons. Any similarities are purely coincidental. The story is presented as a work of fiction, even if it is based on real events or emotions.